you are comfortable with the chat part also, right? You opened up that too, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, over to you, Sagar. All yours.
Thank you, Devang for the very kind introduction. Afternoon to everyone. Sorry, I was first of all a few minutes later than I was supposed to be earlier. And sorry for the last minute change. Something came up. Devang again, thank you. I haven't really, prepared or thought about what I wanted to speak. I just wanted to kind of flow naturally with everyone. And I think from my perspective, I was thinking a better way to do this would I just give a quick brief to everyone in terms of my, work. Of course, college before, but work journey over the last 5 years, and then just have more of a dialogue. If that's how I would prefer it. If everyone is okay with that, Devang.
Perfect. That's how we'll move. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So, friends, I think about 9 years ago was when I graduated my 12th grade and decided to go to the US for my undergrad. It was more of a legacy kind of a thing in the family, wherein my two elder cousins, Pranav bhai and Karan bhai, both of them had gone to the US for their undergrad, and it was to admit not a very well planned thing. It's just that okay, they went, so I have to go as well. So that's what kind of led me to the decision of going to the US. But that being said, I think spending the 4 years there in the US in undergrad at Brown, doing economics and a minor in engineering, I think really changed me as a person completely. So I think it opened up, just places that we come from here in Ahmedabad. It can sometimes be very, very privileged, in the environment that we have around in Ahmedabad. So I think for me personally, having spent every single day and year up to my 12th grade in Ahmedabad, not even outside of Ahmedabad, right, and just moving directly to the US in a completely open, unprotected, competitive environment, where basically you are the only one who is responsible, accountable for every single thing that happens in life, be that academics or like just living life generally, your own home, your own management, your own money, like everything. So huge change for me. But I would say all in all, a very, very, very positive one. The perspective that I got, the multinational, multicultural, a larger perspective. You sometimes think that I think I would say in short and summary that it really got me out of my shell from Ahmedabad, and it just exposed me, opened me up to a lot of other things that are there across from all over the world. People come from 98 countries to the university I went to. So it was, I think, really opened me up as a person in a lot of different ways, gave me a lot of much more global perspective, made me much more responsible as a person fundamentally. Just waking up in the morning and having to do your sheets by yourself sounds like a very small thing, but when you actually get down to doing it, and then having to think about what I'll eat in the afternoon and what I'll eat in the evening and with whom, and how to like manage studies without any tuition support. And well, small things like those really is a very, very different experience for me. It's something that I think really built me and transformed me as a person into what I am today. I would credit a very, very large part to it, a part of it to my education in the US.
So Sagar, can I say that you had the first experience of working in a very different environment and with a lot of different people, and you also learned something about the team structure?
No, absolutely, Devang bhai. 100%, because the fundamental academic process in the US versus India is very, very different in the way that learning in the US is more by doing than by learning. So they make you do things rather than teach them. So it's a lot of group workings, case studies, working on things together, and then kind of as you are doing things, they teach you concepts about them. So it's a very like interactive and immersive experience in that sense. So you're right. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And Devang, please feel free to stop me in the middle.
No,
I don't want to be going on a rant for 10 minutes and then if
no,
you
I
if you
understand.
if
I
you feel
understand.
if you feel you want me to elaborate on something a little more or
Yeah.
tweak anything, I'm just open mind. So just let me know.
No, that
Um,
insight was very good in terms of the
yep.
way in which how you interacted. How about friendships? How about way in which how things are after 5 years? Are you in touch with them? How does it work?
No, Devang, so I think you make a lot of friends. That's also why a lot of people come to these colleges in the first place, because you get a very global colleague base. You have a lot of friends, people who you make friends once you go there. From all over the world, right? And a big reason why a lot of people come there is also for that. It's global networks, global relationships. So I think
Very good.
definitely, but also within that, so of course, tens of relationships across the world from that sense, but also like some of my dearest friends today. And I guess you meet like 100, 200 people, but then there are those 6, 7 people, like any place in the world, right? There are those 6, 7 people who you become really close to, and who become your quote unquote best friends, and very very close friends and buddies. And then
Mm.
I think it was a similar experience for me in that sense.
Very good. Sagar,
But the
when you
biggest
came
thing,
down
Devanshi,
into
what I would say is that the kind of friends, people I had here in Ahmedabad, who I grew up with, and the friends I made there once I went to college was very, very, very big difference. In terms of how the first thing affected me as a person, and the second one, wherein I think I became a much more open-minded, a rounded person. With a lot more kind of I would just say openness to a lot of things, Devang.
so with that
You have a lot of preset ways, to think about things. But then
yes,
you
yes.
go and then you realize that, not necessarily all that you think, or your environment around makes you think is what it is. There is much beyond that, and there is much more than that, and there is so I think from that point of view, it was a very very
So you
eye-opening.
had a window to the world. That's what you say.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
how did that help you when you came down in 2015? How was your induction? What sort of a way in which how you started getting into the the whole business environment? How was that done?
No, so and I find myself very fortunate in that side, Devang. We discussed this earlier. I think when I came back from the US, graduated, there was nothing of that sort. Like the day I was back, the next day office started. So there was no kind of a break, or like nothing of that sort. So I think where I was fortunate, Devang, though, was that the day I came back was literally the day one of our renewable business. And in that sense, I had a lot of privilege to be able to be associated with something from inception, and literally from when there were I was probably the second employee in the organization. And the CEO was hired, and then I joined, and then the whole team was formed. And so in that sense, very very privileged, Devang bhai, wherein a lot of the it's a very very different experience that I see and I realize today, retrospectively thinking about the last 5 years, where being involved and sitting on an established business, wherein system processes are set, an organization is set, way of doing things is set, a fundamental business is set, there's some stable business, stable cash flow coming in, and managing that versus creating something out of nothing are
Mm.
two like fundamentally different things, and they require two fundamentally different mindsets. And
True.
as I was involved in the first part in renewables, where we had nothing, right, to begin with, just 4.5 years ago we just had nothing. Like renewables was like zero for Adani. And
So it was really greenfield in that sense. Real greenfield.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And to where we are today, where we are already the largest company in India, and very steadfastly on our track to become the largest company in the world very soon. It's been a phenomenal experience. I talk about my journey personally, Devang bhai, and again, I would rather that I focus, I spend time with everyone interacting rather than talking about myself.
Yes.
But just give a quick 5 minute brief. I think the way my induction was planned and the way my work journey happened
basically for the first, typically in the way the Adani way we call it, we do things at our end. Having done nothing, the first solar power plant that we ever built, or the first renewable plant which we ever built, which was solar, was, when constructed, the largest renewable power plant in the world. That was the 650 megawatt project that we have in Tamil Nadu, in Kamuthi, South India. Just prior to setting up that project, we, apart from 7-8 years ago, for supporting the then Chief Minister's vision, we had set up a small 40 megawatt plant in Gujarat, which was then the country's largest. But of course, since then, a lot of water had, gone down the bridge. There were companies who were, very, very well-established renewable players in India. There were the Suzlons of the world. There was the Renews, the Greencos, all these companies which were like very, very large companies in renewables before we properly entered. And the first project that we ever did was the single largest location solar power plant in the world, not in India, the world. And that we did completely from scratch, without having no background, no understanding whatsoever. So that was my first kind of, I was just kind of thrown into the ocean and figure things out. So that was what I was doing. My focus first for the first year and a half, Devang bhai, was projects projects execution, projects implementation, project planning, project control. Because Devang bhai, a lot of a very core part of our DNA for Adani is greenfield, and the way we execute complex, large-scale infrastructure projects in time, in cost, and in the best possible manner. So there was no better time for me to be involved in something than what was being undertaken at Adani at that. It was a mammoth task, and it was something that was unimaginable, broadly considered undoable. And there's a National Geographic documentary on it as well. You can share it with everyone on the call right now. That just broadly outlines the process of how that entire process was undertaken. So basically, for the first 6 months, Devang, I was practically working specifically on that specific project, from a project point of view, and from an implementation point of view, from a planning point of view. And 6 months I spent there, physically on the site, frequently. Used to at least be there like 3-4 times a week. That used to be that was my first point of learning in terms of structurally, how do we think about these things? When, of course, we read about it, we see it that, okay, we're constructing Mundra Port, largest in the country, like unbelievable power plants. How do these things conceptualize, and how do these things come up? What is our journey? How do we go about these things? So, what's step 1? What's step 5? What's step 10? What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? How do you interact with vendors? How do you arrange cash flow in a non-existent company? How do you, do all of these? It was a very, 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 it was just like literally a flood of business understanding and information just coming all at once, which I can admit right now, which was very, very difficult for me at once, because people who have 20, 25, 30 years of experience in one specific field, kind of they've done that 10 times before, so they know how to do it. But for someone like me who's just kind of got into it fresh, an amalgamation of all these things coming together and to be able to cope with it is not a very easy thing. So I struggled with it in the beginning. The first year and a half especially were very difficult. But thankfully I couldn't have had a better mentor than Vineet, who was mentoring me at that time, and who I was working with and associated with and reporting to directly. So that was a
hardcore project person.
Yeah, he's the projects guru of the Adani Group. So for people who don't know him, so I was very fortunate in that sense. But I think Devang bhai, once so my first year and a half to almost 2 years, I would say, were associated with just learning and and absorbing and grasping and just kind of trying to get a hang of what there is and how things work. Both navigating our own organization internally, because it's such a large, complex organization, who does what, if you need something to be done, like how to get that done within our own system to begin with. and then, on the outside, and, what kind of factors come together to create something like this. And, we did that very successfully. And, that was a sense of a lot of satisfaction. But after about a year and a half working in this, Devang bhai, personally, learning in this personally, then I was given responsibility for another about 1 year, for taking charge of project execution and being the single point accountable and responsible person for projects execution within Adani Green for whatever we are doing.
So you became the manager. You became the manager now, hardcore manager.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So at that time, you can say it was a kind of a combination of a manager come leader role, wherein of course I was accountable for very specific day-to-day things as well, but also accountable for an organization of about 350 people who were working in projects by that time in Adani Green, and how to kind of put them all together cohesively and get the 27 odd projects that we were running in parallel at that time when I was looking at it off the ground. 27 different places land acquisition, 27 different places site teams, site organizations. How do you structure every one of the sites? How do you structure the head office? How do things flow? How does information flow? How do decisions flow? What comes to the HO? What does not? What decisions are taken there? What decisions are taken here? How do we manage 26 project financial closures at once from a finance point of view? How do you arrange the cash flows? How do you make sure that 27 projects in parallel orderings are done? How do you make sure contractors are mobilized? How do you control timelines? How do you control costs for 27 projects in parallel, in a matter of 1 year? So there were a lot of...
So it sounds very exciting. Tell me one thing which as you have in that period, there is cash flow, there is project schedules. What is one thing that you feel that the students should learn, and when they become managers, infra managers, what is one thing that is very important for them?
So Devang bhai, I would, from having worked at a very, and for this 1 year where I was, physically 8 months, for 8 months literally, I was on the road. So just, from one side to the other, second to the third to the fourth, like living in the remotest parts of the country, because I think there's two things, Devang bhai, that I would say when you talk about if you want to deliver on something like this, what are the two main important things you need to make sure you have in place? One, Devang bhai, I would say fundamentally and first has to be the team and how you structure it. So make sure that you have the right team, you have the right structure of the team in terms of how, because I say all this very simplistically, but this is a combination of basically 15 departments coming together to be able to deliver this. So how things interact, the teams interact with one another as well. Between them, so that there's
teams, a huge amount here.
Cross functionality and how that cohesive nature works, and everyone understands what they're supposed to do. But once these things are fairly common, the one thing I would say is that how do you ensure that from a leadership point of view, the teams are absolutely motivated, excited, and that every single person on the ground and in the office will put in their 110%. Because one thing I have learned, Devang bhai, is that, irrespective of the mechanisms you put in place, irrespective of the structures you put in place, irrespective of the systems, processes you put in place, at the end of the day, it comes to individual accountability, ownership, and drive. And how do you make sure that people all the way from the peon to the project head think that this is their project, think that this is their organization, and think that and if whatever they were supposed to, they themselves, I'm not talking about something that as managers we would enforce or we would have to do. How do they themselves as individuals independently make sure that if something that was supposed to be done today does not get done today, they don't go to sleep at night tonight themselves.
So it's one alignment of all the people to one goal.
Correct. So how do you rally the people? How do you make them believe that they're a part of something much larger? How do you connect them to the larger vision? How do you, create that drive and that accountability within themselves? Because one thing, Devang, I've learned is, in large teams, in large organizations, large things, fundamentally, without systems and processes, nothing can work. But having just systems and processes without having individual ownerships is a very, 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 it'll all sound very good on a piece of paper, but nothing will ever get done. So how do you, create that? So I think that's from I'm just whatever little I've learned and whatever perspective I've been able to develop for myself, I'm just sharing with you. So that's
so
one
right.
thing.
It's all about people. So the 3 people processes. I think you should be a professor now. Sagar, next time, we're going to compel you to come and teach us, It's very good. Yeah, it's all about people. If you get that thing right, the processes and all that will follow. Very true. Very true. Yeah, go ahead.
And tell us your second thing.
Tell us your time, okay? Because it's important.
No problem. No, I'll just touch upon the second thing that I was talking about. I think it's very important that Devang bhai, when you talk about, again, in infra, when you talk about large infra projects and the complexity associated with it, it's very, very, very crucial that you are able to very clearly imagine the end game. One, that ultimately whatever you are doing, wherever you are, where do you want to reach at the end, and what is the goal and what is the output? That picture has to be very, very clear in your mind, and every single step you take should be in that direction. Second, Devang bhai, I personally believe is there should be absolute clarity in terms of, to get to that goal, exactly what all is required, every single thing, and to the planning to the minutest detail before you start execution. And I think that, Devang bhai, in an infra world is absolutely critical and crucial, because I'll just give you an example. When you talk about, let's say, a learning that we had, we were executing projects worth about 7,000 crores, on 26 different sites in the country. 27,000 crores we were executing, Devang bhai, where, imagine supply chain, logistics, teams, planning, project, cash flows in 26 parallel things together. Out of that, I'll just give a small example to see how things kind of materialize. One thing that we realized a little later into execution was that we had ordered for fixing the solar modules onto the structures. We had ordered the wrong size of bolts. So while everything, right from the 600 components that go into a solar power plant, we had 599 of them absolutely right. And imagine this, Devang, just because of wrong size of bolts, our entire project schedule was having to be shifted by about 10 to 30 days in different sites, different timelines. So what I mean to say by that, Devang, is that, if everything is in place, if there is a single thing that is not there, in terms of a single approval, a single permission, a single component, a single cash flow, if it's not there, the entire thing gets stuck up completely. So it's very important.
You're doing multiple sites, complex projects. Yeah. So
correct. And even if you do a single site large project, Devang, the philosophy stays the same.
Same.
That at the end of the day, when you, let's say, the gestation period for the project is 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on the type of project. 3 years hence, exactly where do you want to be and what do you need to get done? For getting to that, what has to be done when has to be very, very, very clear to the nth level of minutest detail.
And there are a lot of tools available.
Rigorously followed.
There are a lot of tools available now.
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
So your monitoring tools, your project planning tools, etc. Right? So can I say that people is number one, and the second most important part is the execution part? Most important, planning. Yeah, planning the entire gamut of execution because
Correct.
Adani is also famous for execution, the speed, the aspect, and all
Absolutely.
that comes from very different. Yeah. So, and plus, of
Absolutely.
course, whatever you learn, whatever there is some failure, you also go back and use that failure as a learning lesson so that it improves the
Correct.
next time. These two important.
Correct.
Great. Anything else
Absolutely.
you want to add?
So I think this is broadly then this was my first about, let's say, 2.5 to 3 years, and since the last 2 years I've been once this phase of projects got completed end to end, I moved on to a much sort of a quote unquote business role wherein had a much larger visibility. So for the last, let's say, 2.5 years, my first year after I finished my projects was just about learning business overall. How does finance work? How does HR work? What are the important things to put in place? What are the conceptually, how do you think about things? Organizationally, how to be set up in the right way, from all the way from government relations to corporate affairs to business development to regulatory affairs. So about a year and a half I spent just kind of absorbing again and learning from scratch all of these things, because I'd never been exposed to them before. And since the last 1 year, I'm kind of in many of those things directly accountable and responsible myself, where I directly handle those things, and some things where I'm still not very good at them, get the right kind of support I would need to be able to do a decent job on them. So
So
that's
suddenly,
where I am.
Sagar, now tell me, suddenly if you say you spend 5 years in the solar area, and suddenly
Yeah.
tomorrow we tell you, we want you to go up and take up a large, huge setup of a manufacturing in a global environment. How do you see?
Yeah.
What is, I see a smile on your face. How do you see a very different challenge coming to you? How do you face that?
So Devang bhai, I think what I personally have absorbed from the little that I have learned in the last 4 5 years is that there's, when you talk about business or success in business, right, Devang bhai, there's two parts to it. There's one which is the specifics of that business, right? In terms of how does that specific business work, and how does that what are the nuances in that particular business, and getting to dig your heels deep into the specifics of that business. And then there's certain larger business philosophies, which are philosophies. You move from X business to Y business to Z business to A to B to C. Those philosophies, fundamental philosophies of how to structure an organization, what is leadership, and
A
how to be a
framework.
good leader.
What do you say is a
The
framework?
Yeah, exactly. So those so I think a lot of and I would say that it's 50-50 between both of these. So how do you kind of conceptually think about things? Once you have that in place, which I've had. I mean, I'm a long way away from digging that down completely. But the little that I have learned, it's those things that give you a lot of comfort and surety in terms of okay, like fundamentally, how do you approach things, that gives you a good grounding and a benchmark in terms of what you've done before. Now what remains is that, of course, you have to spend those 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, 1.5 years to just absorb the business specifically as well, in terms of its own nuances. And it's a learning journey for everyone, right? So
Very true. Can we take up the questions now? Because I know you are short of time. You have
please,
other
Devang,
meetings
yes, yes.
lined up. Yeah,
No
and you
problem.
have some. Yeah, you have a couple of. Can you see some of the chat questions on your chat, Sagar?
Unfortunately, I'm on my VC screen. Let me see if I can
Okay.
get
No,
that
it's okay.
out.
Okay. I'll
No,
read out.
unfortunately, I can't.
So,
I can't. You'll have to read it out to me. Yeah.
so yeah. So one of the stuff that has come out is Smriti Ranjan is asking, what should be the key strength for a project manager, keeping in view of time and cost? Does experience really matter?
I would say that it's wrong to say that experience does not matter. Experience has a huge value of its own, and that's one of the I've always been being graduated in a US university. You're all with that mindset that screw experience, like it's all about the young people, it's all about the young age, and it's all about the like just go ahead, like everyone can do everything kind of a thing. But the one thing I have learned is that it's very important to have that right mix of experience and energy in any setup. And when you talk about a project manager, just again, my perspective on things is that it's not about any manager, or it's not about any one person. It's all about the team. And it's very, very important that the team that you have in place, the 20, 25, 30 odd guys and girls that you have in place to be able to, deliver on this. It's never about any individual. It's not about me. It's not about the project head. It's not about the engineer. It's not about anyone. It's about the team overall. And how in that team, you have a good mix of, people who've done that before, experience in terms of who can visualize that, okay, when you take this step, what could be the possible repercussions, in terms of something that they've faced before. And a good mix of energy in terms of fresh thinking that, okay, that's always how it's been done, but what about if we do it in this way, and a good mix of these two is very, very important, both in terms of energy and experience. But I would always, one thing that I always personally very, very strongly feel that it's, never about an individual. It's all about always the team. And that's what success gets you to success.
Very true. So very well done. Sagar, one more question that is coming up is, Adani Green how is Adani Green different from other players in the market? How do you differentiate?
I try to make it as non-technical as possible on the call for the benefit of everyone. But
exactly.
I would say, Devang bhai, when you I think it starts fundamentally from the way we go about thinking things and the creativity that we all get an inspiration about, as from your experience, from the chairman himself, in terms of a fresh and new, different way of looking at things every single day. And I think that's what all the credit for that goes to Uncle, our chairman. And I think that's what fundamentally drives and differentiates us from everyone else. That being said, Devang bhai, I think in terms of I would say that we have by far the best execution and implementation skill in the country, and one of the best globally. I would go so far as to say, after our joint venture with Total that we have in Adani Green, the way we've seen how they do things, and when they've seen the way we do things, they are astonished completely in terms of how can you guys do something like this. So I would say it's one of the best strengths that we have within our organization. It's to be able to execute. And when I say execute not only O&M, not only projects, execute O&M, execute on every single plan the business has. And the drive with which we go about doing things. We don't leave any stone unturned. And I think it's that commitment, that drive, that ownership that makes us, that percolates everywhere, to make us the most cost competitive, to make us the most time efficient, to make us the most O&M efficient, to make us, bid and win for the best kind of projects. But it's fundamentally those things that trickle down into every single thing that we do.
So one very interesting question is, how are we at Adani in terms of integrating digital in power generation?
So I very fundamentally...
Even a thinking would do, not the technical part.
Yeah. So I fundamentally believe, Devang bhai, that any organization which is not digital minded is never ever going to be as efficient or more efficient than the other. When I say that, I mean, and again, to not get into technicals in terms of how we do O&M digitally, how do we do project control digitally, it's more technical things, not touching upon that right now. But I think not only the Adani Green, in every single one of our businesses, I think conceptually and fundamentally, it's very important that we keep our eye out there. We see globally, what developments are happening, what's available, and most importantly, what is the most relevant in terms of even though that development or that progress may be happening in some other field which is non-related, even if there is some possible intervention into our field, I think it's very important to keep an eye out and not, it's not a yearly 6-monthly review kind of a thing. It's a daily thing. So I think it's very, very important how, you keep that mindset that whatever you do today can there be more synergies to be brought by way of digitization? And it's very, very important that every single organization does that on an every single day basis, and not anything else, any less than that.
It's a big initiative down the line also for all of us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
A quick question on how do you select a proper team? This is all about selection. What is your insight on that?
So,
what do you look for in a team?
Devang bhai, first of all, it's a very, Bollywood way of saying it, but you have to first look for the spark. You have to first look for the spark in the eye. And I think, to me, that specific thing, is the most important. Of course, it's I say that so casually, but it's a much deeper thing than that. It's a very scientific way of doing things in terms of how do you, set up the entire organization structure. How do you have to first define what skill sets you require. Then you have to define that, from the senior most level to the junior most level, you have to first be able to sit back and imagine, Devang bhai, that to deliver on this, what would I need and what sort of skill set would I need? And the one thing, the big picture, exactly. And then you have to be able to draw up an organization chart which gives you that, okay, if I have these many people, these kinds of people from these different fields of understanding, from these different fields of practice, then how do you first design that? And then within that, what we try to do, or what I personally try to do, Devang bhai, and different people do it differently. There is, it's more of an, it is a fundamental science, but also an art in that sense that there is no single answer. It's a very individual dependent thing. The way I like to do it, Devang bhai, is that I always like to have a very, very strong combination of old and experienced, but very agile, not laid back. So old and experienced, but very agile, and young and energetic, with a very quick grasping and understanding power and energy and openness to learn things very, very quickly, and that drive. So I think, you kind of have to find a way to be able to merge these two things. And then, sometimes you also look for people who've done that before, because not every single time is it logical to reinvent the wheel. So if there is some, if there's people, and there always are people who have done that before. So how do you kind of, attract the right talent into your organization? How do you merge fresh talent with it? So it's not necessarily that, someone who's done that before, we replicate the same way, but we get and we build on that experience, but also bring in the new creativity, and together make a solution that works kind of best for. I know what I'm saying is very, very top level and very high level, but I can't find a better way to explain it right now.
It makes very good sense in the way which how you want people to shape up to your overall vision, and how they are aligned to the entire amount of what the initiative is. If you want to become the largest company in the world, not an easy vision. It's a very, very clear, structured. I want to go there. I will reach there. Very important. Utsav is asking
when I said earlier, Devang, about individual ownership, that's one thing that we always try to assess very, very carefully in interviews there when we do. And when I say a spark in the eye, in a different way, it means that only. That, you have to make sure that, if this guy's job is not done, will he be able to sleep at night or not? So it's that very specific thing, because you can't always have systems and controls at every single level. So you have to have, you have to be able to trust the people who are doing that thing independently.
And one very important lesson that friends we have learned from the Adani group is that people who are not technically competent to do certain things were given responsibilities, and they excelled in those responsibilities. So there is a way in which how, if there is spark in that person, he can do very different things, and especially in your careers in the next 20 years, it is not going to be the same structure again and again. There'll be so many changes. That's a very important insight from here. Two quick things. One is, as a young person, what drives you so deep into the business and sound so strong and consummate? And someone is asking what type of books you read. This is your very personal thing. How do you spend so much of your time in business, and then what do you do in your personal level in reading books, meeting friends, or whatever? Tell us something about that.
So Devang bhai, I think I'll take the business part first. One, I think it's the possibility and opportunity to be a part of something that is much, 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 much larger than yourself, and to be able to touch literally millions and millions and millions of lives in a very fundamental way. Talk about electricity. It's something that we don't think about. We are very fortunate to not have to think about ever, right? But there's millions of people in the world, and in India specifically, if I talk about the world, who do not have access to that fundamentally. If you are able to devise a way wherein you are able to, in a very clean and affordable manner, bring that to them, I think it is a very different sense of fulfillment. So I think after a point, it's not even about the money, or it's not even about the business or the size or scale or the EBITDA, so to speak, or the cash flow or the profit or the market cap. It's at the end of the day about being able to create something that is so much larger than all of that, and to be able to be a small part in that journey is something that is unbelievably exciting and fulfilling. So
it's not just financial part. Yeah.
Absolutely, it never is. If that is what it is, then you can never get beyond a point. Devang, is what I believe. So it's that larger thing that makes you want to get up in the morning and get to the office first thing. So I think that's what drives me personally. But on the personal side, have to admit, it's not a beautiful balance for me. So
the work balance part.
Yeah, I know I need to improve on that. When I was in college and shortly thereafter, I used to do a lot of reading. I used to read books from all over the place. Like I do believe that there is a huge value in reading, and staying within four walls, it opens up it's a window to the world, right? From your bedroom, literally, you can physically feel you in a lot of different places, but it's something, unfortunately, I myself for the last 4 years have not been able to do very well. So I need to improve on that. It's funny you asked me this. Actually, just about 15 days ago, I was sitting with someone and trying to modify my schedule a little bit, wherein I can make some time for myself for reading and some of these things I would like to do for myself. But right now, from a business point of view, the phase that we are at, calls start at 7:30 in the morning, and you end things up at almost every single day beyond midnight. So there's no, you're just so done by the end of it and so exhausted that
you have to make time out of your 24 hours. You have to take out more time.
Yeah,
Barkha is asking.
That's not something I'm proud of, and that's not a good thing to do. I'm myself actively trying to change that. So, but yeah, right. So, that's where I am right now. Yeah.
So before can I have some 5 more minutes from you?
Yeah.
Or you have to rush up. Okay.
No problem. Yeah.
Barkha is asking an interesting question. So many bottlenecks come in our journey. Also, at the same time, we want to do multiple things. How do we go about doing that? Just guide me in this situation. Many things. You said 27. That's a word that we use. 27 things happening. How do you juggle? How do you manage that? What sort of a mindset you should have? And they are possibly talking in the context of the 2 years of lots of reading very diverse things and learning. How do you make them ready for that?
So I think Devang bhai, fundamentally, there in any business context, not only in India, be it a small business, medium business, large business within India, globally, it's very, very important. There will always be 500 things running in parallel, as there should be. And especially if you're a rapidly growing business, there's also a lot of challenges on top of that to be able to deal with on a daily basis. So I think it's very, very crucial. And there is no magic wand, or no one is Superman. There is no magic wand, and there is no think that, okay, I work 18 hours a day, so I'm better than the other. Like,
so how do you
it's
prioritize? What is your special skill in
so
prioritizing?
first, or for Devang, I will answer it in a specific. First of all, it's very important to make sure that for whatever you want to do, you are structured correctly, fundamentally. So that is the very fundamental, before again, I want to, because I sometimes, and this is only my personal, whatever I personally feel and think, and my perspective on things, Devang bhai. But what I sometimes think is that people make a very big mistake of, making things very personal from a business point of view. And it's that, okay, like if something needs to be done, I need to work 14 hours a day. No. If you have to work 16, 18 hours a day to do something, then that means that something so critically is dependent on you as an individual, and that's not ever the right thing for an organization. And you have to make sure that you are structured yourself in a way that at every single level, in every single department, things that they're supposed to be doing are done, and they're the right and competent people at those places to be able to do the things that they're supposed to be doing.
You can't be indispensable.
You can never ever be, whether that is, a promoter, an owner, a CEO, a manager, no one in the system should ever think that they're indispensable. And if there is a situation that someone is indispensable, then you're fundamentally in the wrong situation. So that's what I would fundamentally say, Devang bhai. Of course, that being said, it's not a perfect world, and there will always be times and periods and, weeks and months wherein there is a very intense pressure, and of course you have to keep up with it. You have to make up with it, and and whatever needs to be done, Devang bhai. So that's
one last question that I would like to ask, because I think Swarnadeep is asking, how do you deal with risks?
No, so from when, and again, as a part of I work closely with the group CFO, who heads the risk committee of the group, of the entire Adani group, and more from an academic and learning point of view for me specifically. And I think the biggest thing, Devang bhai, I would say, when you talk about risk, every single thing that you do in business, there is a risk associated with it. And risks are of like 500 different types, right? From like macro things to things that are out of your control, things that are within your control, there's 500 things, right? From like things that happen around you countrywide, things that happen within your business, within your sector, within your company, within your risk, organizational risk. What if people leave tomorrow? What if the CEO leaves? What if the management team leaves? What if the bank does not give you money? What if the project planning goes wrong? What if the fundamental engineering is not correct? What if in every single aspect of whatever you do on a daily basis, there's risk. So I think again, Devang bhai, it's very important to be able to differentiate what are the risks that are out of your control, that you are taking a conscious call about. That I understand that this is the risk, that tomorrow something like this could happen, but even if it would happen, it is out of my control, but I'm taking a conscious call that I'm assuming that this thing will not happen. Or if this thing happens, the situation will be a little inferior for me, and I accept that something like this could happen.
And possibly you have some worst case or mitigation plan also in mind.
Yeah, correct, exactly. And wherein like something like COVID, like COVID happened, it's not sectoral, it's a systemic risk that, the entire country is affected by it. So I myself, or us as a business, can't do anything about, COVID risk, other than, of course, financially planning for it once it happens, in terms of, reserving cash, in terms of all of those things. But then there is also a lot of different risks which are at a operating level. And therein, to be able to identify all of them, and again, to be able to have the right systems and processes to be able to minimize, there can never be no risk. So the only question is, how do you minimize the possibility of all of those things happening? And that can only be done via systems and processes. How do you put the right organization and then layer it up with the right systems? So there are right checks and balances, There's the right, there's a second eye mechanism wherein you're able to kind of deal and minimize the possibility of those risks happening in the system.
Very true. How do you see the difference between, last question, okay? How do you see the difference between an entrepreneurial mindset and a managerial mindset? Is there a difference at all? Or how do you, what is your view?
There is a big difference, Devang bhai, although I would say that personally, I believe that having an entrepreneurial mindset is a very overused word and it's a big cliche. And I think personally, that it's not a fair thing because, it gives a very wrong perspective to a lot of people. And people sometimes think that entrepreneurs are all about taking risk and it's all about taking, okay, you go ahead and do it, figure it out, like perseverance. Those things are all very beautiful and good to say, but at the end of the day, like we've seen some of the best entrepreneurs that at one time were like regarded as like unbelievable entrepreneurs. They went on podiums, gave speeches about how it's all about risk and how you should be taking risk and about courage and perseverance, and you've seen them disappear overnight. And so I think first of all, what do you mean by entrepreneurship? Of course, it's entrepreneurship, and there is a difference between people's appetite to be able to take risk. But what I think very few people understand, and I for those things I look to Uncle, our chairman, in terms of I think for me he's like he's like the gold plate version of entrepreneurship. But somehow when you dig down deeper in terms of how he makes his decisions, you see that from a risk perspective, he has such a deep understanding inherently. Just it's a God's gift to him. Inherently, he has such a deep understanding of risk. And when you say that he's taking a risk, he to the nth and to the T has absolute clarity in terms of what risk he is taking and what risk he's not taking. And what risk rather he wants to take or he doesn't want to take.
I think he also sees the risk as really an opportunity in many ways also.
Correct. And for every opportunity that we decide to pursue, Devang bhai, there's minimum of 5 to 7 that we decide not to pursue as well.
Not to pursue.
From a risk perspective. So it's very important that people understand this larger thing as well. It's not about just taking risk and going ahead and doing things. It's also very, very important that knowing what not to do at the same time. So that's one thing I leave.
Sagar, it's been a pleasure for the last more than almost an hour now. It's been a pleasure. You took out so much of time. I think you gave a very, very different perspective. I see the level of enthusiasm. I see the way in which how many of you people, I'm sure the students would have seen a very different perspective and very issues that I outlined. More important is that the big things plus the small details, everything is very, very important for him. And I see him keep a pad, note down things, prioritize, and also follow in a very, very structured manner as his father does. His father is also meticulous. The best part of the whole game is you can learn anything, however difficult. I've seen what I've learned from the two brothers, especially Sagar's father also, that things which are normally you are not used to knowing, and people will not expect that you will know this. But the moment he also has a way in which he picks up a pad and a pencil, they will break it down and make it in such a simple way. So one of the most important part is how do you de-jargonize the whole thing. And Sagar is fortunate to have a wonderful father and an uncle who really gives him a very different insight on a day-to-day basis and mentors him. We are all there. One of the messages that the Adani family gives to all of you is that we are all there and we are there for you to ask questions and to make a plan of your own life. Thank you, Sagar. Any one of the students wants to come on the picture and on the visual video and thank Sagar, we'll be more than happy. One of you can come over immediately.
Devang bhai, thank you. It was a great session. I think
you had many questions. Beautiful. So many questions that I'm not. Come. Please interact, Ketan. I think you are on mute. Ketan, you are on mute.
Hello, sir.
Okay.
Am I audible, sir?
Sagar sir.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hi.
Ketan.
Okay. So, sir, on behalf of all the students and attendees of the year 2022, would like to thank you, sir, for such an interesting session. It was like a open mind session to the all. We were having so much doubts and so much confusion you solved today for us. So, thank you so much, sir, for the session. Thank you, sir.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Ketan.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Sagar.
having me. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Devang bhai. And
Yeah.
I'm always available if you ever need to reach out to me. Thank
We'll
you.
do that. We'll take you up on that. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Devang
Pleasure.
bhai. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. Hiren, are we continuing or the session is over? What do you want to do?
Sir, such session we will never want to. This kind of session we will not want to finish. These sessions can continue till like I don't know when.
Yeah,
So
I
much
know.
of learning. Like this is the learning which you never get from the books or anywhere else. It's just
Very
when you.
and it's important that, and that's what we mentioned, and Professor Lakshmi also mentioned, is that here is a person who was put into it, like getting into a new environment and saying that here's the scale. There is of course mentoring, there is hand-holding, but at the end of the day, you start thinking very early in your life. You independently start taking up all the issues, evaluate, learn from them, and you see the humility of this person. He's been working for last 5 years in a very intense, extremely competitive, and a very challenging environment. 27 projects across, and he mentioned the components of the projects. Okay, so there are so many things that he has told us. He talked to us. Here is a screen that is, can you guys see the screen? I will just take about 10-15 minutes of yours.
Here are some of the things
Yes,
that
sir.
you
Yes, sir.
spoke of, sir, if you can sort of, delve a bit more on the same for all of us.
Yeah. So what is it that we asked him today? Okay. We asked him about what is the stuff that he did in USA. Okay. First time. And he quoted from Ahmedabad to America. Now you see the amount of way in which how you get a very different exposure. You are in a very sheltered, extremely protected environment with hardly any decisions. Everything is taken for you. And now you're in a very different environment. That is exactly one of the most important insight that is there, that you are going to experiment there. You're going to actually be yourself. That is the message. So here when you are there, you have a chance to be yourself, to see what is it that you want to do with life. Okay. Then you will have lots of friendships, lots of colleagues you will have. Many people in a very different environment will work together. You will work with people in the group also together. So that's one insight that he gave us. And my takeaway from there is essentially learning is a continuous affair. What you learn, you will always use down the line, whatever way. So there is someone who mentioned about a failure, etc. Yes, everything is a learning essence. And I've got we'll talk about lots of failures that we went through and how we learned from it. Okay. About the alternate energy business, this is the largest disruptive structure that is happening. And the one word that you will come across again and again is the sustainability part. So get this definition of sustainability very clear in your mind. Understand what it means, all the dimensions. There are lots of dimensions to it. We will talk today, we'll have some time, we'll talk about what I feel that you should look at it, read about it, because today that has become a very important differentiating factor for companies to perform an individual mindset too. How do you embed sustainability in everything? By investing in an infrastructure asset or by developing an infrastructure asset or whatever. Okay. Then there are scalability. He talked about 27 projects being number one world. 10,000, 20,000 megawatt of power plants coming up. And you understand the difference between a scale of putting up a 5,000 Mundra thermal plant in Mundra is very different from putting up a solar plant in 30 locations. Everywhere the same project complexity is there. So that's why when you look at it, when your project schedules, your clashes, and your way of allocating resources, a very different model that will come to mind. So everywhere you have to look at it, how is the scale adding to the complexity? Okay, that's what is very important. Okay, technology, he talked about digital structure, he talks about one fine day when you are settled down, go and visit the control rooms of all these places. These are very complex facilities, multiple locations, how everything, all the decisions are captured in one particular area. So the entire dashboard gives you very different day-to-day inputs and parameters. Okay, that's a very important thing. Pursuing to be #1 world solar company. One very important thing in the group is, and that's what each of you individuals also should understand, is that when we think something that we want to do, I want to be #1, I want to be #2, you end up doing that. So this is like something that comes to your mind again and again. It's a self, what you call, telling yourself again and again. There's a technical word for that. Again and again, you are telling this in your mind, morning, evening, I want to be #1. I want to go ahead and do this. And it happens. So this self-fulfilling prophecy, that is the word. You need to be, all of you, clear that I want to understand these sectors. I want to understand the complexities. I want to be very good in this area. And this, what competencies I need to acquire, I want to do that. Once you start thinking that way, it will happen. So that's one of the very important things comes up in how do you look at it. Looking at he talked about value chain. He talked about a huge amount of complexity of various issues of implementation and then running it also. The second most important that Professor Kamal will teach you will be all about strategy. Now strategy has so many dimensions, and another word for strategy is innovation. So you can be innovative here, now. How are you learning? What sort of a thing that you are connecting? What do you mean by #1 solar plant? What do you mean by solar storage issues? So can I think differently? Can I do my learning differently? Can I do my memorizing differently? There are so many things that you can bring in. The second important S is the strategy, which you will learn, learn to connect the dots. I specifically put this words in the red because these are the things that I connect. Sustainability, strategy, okay? Complex projects, he talked about people. He talked about the way to build up the team. This is going to be one of the most important thing that you will learn. I mentioned that earlier too, is that how do you manage large teams, diverse teams? How do you take benefits from diversity? I have people from very different backgrounds now. Earlier, people were not able to, where they were not coming to Ahmedabad, and in our initial years, people did not want to come to Ahmedabad. Okay. Today now we have got global employment. We have people from all over the world. Now, how do you manage them? One of the biggest, single most important part of the Adani culture is how do you manage people? And that means how do you understand that people? So go into depth when the HR function comes, when you learn about organizations, when you learn about people, what it means to understand the other person's point of view. How do I tailor-made my communications? My communications are very different. My communication to a large chairman of a big investment fund like Fidelity is very different. My communication to a person in a very different village environment whose land I am going to buy is very different. How do I comfort him? How do I bring my communication level tailor-made to him? So there are very important issues that require to be understood in the people context. And we learned about how to be a entrepreneurial manager. Okay, one of the most important the third S what I talk about in this is the skin in the game. Look at the skin in the game. Skin in the game is all about, it is mine. It is my creation, my effort, and my team's effort, and it's going to affect me. This particular issue, that when I am owning, Adani's own many of the companies, they own more than 70-75% stake in those companies. Okay, it means day in and day out, they are the people which affects their skin. The skin in the game is one of the most important criteria in your employment also as a manager. How do you bring in your alignment with the organization? That I feel the pain, what he mentioned, a very important insight that gave us, that the pain that comes is to me first, okay, and then to my team. I feel the pinch first. A right decision or wrong decision? The people who have said that I have wrongly ordered the size of the bolts is a very cascading effect on the entire project. Now, how does that everyone then say, oh, it's a collective issue? It is we are all connected to that. So this is a very important third concept that I want to talk briefly. Hiren, how much time do we have?
So maybe 5-7 more minutes.
Okay, so these three things, I want to do it. I don't think this will be get over in 5-7 more minutes. So we'll have to carry on differently. I only want to leave these three particular words with you. Whatever you can dig up, do it yourself. But this was one slide that at some point of time we'll discuss in detail. We talked about strategy. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So we'll not go into details today because we don't have the time, but I'll take you to the next slide after this. I want you to remember this. He mentioned about becoming #1 project by 2025. That is the result. I want you to connect this. I want in the next 2 years, please follow him closely. We will facilitate that. How is this journey from the plan? He talked about plan again and again. The strategy plan. How is this journey going to happen? And what lessons you are going to learn in your course from the strategy professor, Dr. Kamal Kishore. He will take you through what is required. You will understand lots of issues about leadership. You will understand what decision making is required. You will understand lots of processes in the business. All these, and of course the culture and the resources. This is a diagram which Hiren will circulate to you. Keep this in your mind. Our target is under the leadership of Sagar Adani, Adani Green Energy, today which is a very valuable company, almost 30,000 crores or 40,000 crores of market value, which is a substantial market value for this company. It's going to go from the plan stage to the entire amount of the outcome or the result stage. How will we become the #1 global solar global company? Okay, it will happen. Possibly it will happen earlier too. Let's track this journey. Let's see what went into it. Let's relate to. Keep one case. Keep only the green energy case in your mind. Wherever you learn, relate it to it. Is there a people issue? Can I look at it here? Is there a process issue? Is there an issue about challenges on financial closure? Is there an issue about regulatory? Everything that you will see, we will go through this journey. There are lots of such things, but this I want you to keep very much in your mind. Next slide. Yes, this is for this thing further to that. So, but we'll discuss it at a later date. Next slide. We talked a lot about skin in the game. One of the most important thing is I want to just leave with you, not the whole thing, only one particular insight. What do you mean by skin in the game? And read this paragraph. This is a 3,800 years old practice. If a builder builds a house and the house collapses and causes the death of the owner of the house, the builder shall be put to death. Upfront disincentive. What is the disincentive? Builder knows more than any safety inspector what lies hidden in the foundations. You will learn about insider trading. You will learn about what is the information asymmetry. You will learn very complex things. In simple words, it says that you are the builder. When you are selling your product, someone may ask about business development. One of the most important thing in business development is that what product you are selling, are you in any way going to camouflage that? Is the risk to the customer is very huge. Now they are coming out with regulatory risks now. If a manufacturer does not give the right information, he will be penalized, he will be jailed. This particular concept of skin in the game is whatever is going to affect you, if you are the builder, whatever is going to affect you, you are the first person whom will be penalized. If a legion, if a loses battle, if a particular army, part of the army, and there is a suspicion of cowardice, 10% of the soldiers and commanders are put to death. Now look at the simple way of skin in the game. If you have this concept that I am a manager, I'm not here for my employment and my salary. I'm here for putting the whole piece in place. My understanding of the risk, my understanding of the entire process is very different inside. So skin in the game is something that is very important, okay, that you should remember. We'll go into more detail over a period of time. Strategy, let's go to the last one, sustainability, in 2 minutes. Yeah, Ritesh, some questions you're asking. This is one important issue in your lifetime. In the next 20 years, it's going to be paramount. Whenever you learn a subject, when you start next month, look at embedding issues of what it means to be a sustainable initiative or an organization. Don't forget that. There are lots of things like you'll come across ESG, you'll come across 3BL, you'll come across Gaia. Find out what it means. My favorite one is, of course, Gaia. Because in your 20 years, your environment issues, your issues about inequality in society, your issues about the way in which how governance, respect for institutions comes in is going to be the most important part. Sagar mentioned one vision. He says money of course interests me, but money does not interest me just for the money. I'm looking at what it does to millions of people's lives. One of the most important and understood concept is how you can make a difference to others in every way. So please get that big picture, and your generation has that particular philosophy. He talked about business philosophy. You see, I hope you guys have made notes. He talked about a philosophy. The philosophy of a business is not just money. It is all about society. It's all about how the environmental part is also to be looked into it. And most important issue is how about respect to the people. So get that into mind, understand this, the richness of it, whatever you do, whichever subject you pick up, whichever career you choose, ensure that these fundamental principles become part of your DNA. Okay, at some point of time, we'll discuss lots of concepts. We'll get into it. You yourself can come back and say, how does it mean? My favorite, of course, as I said, is Gaia. Gaia is a great, extremely good concept. See how you read, go through that. You'll get a very different insight about how the society is going to unfold. I hope, friends, you enjoyed today's session, and we'll have plenty of this. There are so many people who have such tremendous amount of richness of transactions and richness of experience that they can share, and hope you enjoyed it. Anything that you need more, let us know. Hiren will coordinate, and of course, all of us are there for you. Thank you, guys. Anything that you would like to answer, or we meet next time?
Yeah, sir, we meet next time. I believe it's enough for the day for the entire lot of the attendees today.
Yeah,
they have so much more to sort of dwell now.
Yeah, very true. No, I think keep your things, your concepts clear, foundation structures, and this Sagar Adani is essentially a part of almost your generation. So he's able to relate to you much better, and he'll be, as you said, he'll more than often come and sing. So send a thank you note, Hiren, on our behalf, and
sure.
A great.
Yes.
We will meet again, and you take care of yourself. Bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We wrap up the session now, and we see you again tomorrow, 11. Thank you.
Thank you so much.